Today I'm going to show you how to start your very own podcast this year with every step that you need to get started. I've been co-hosting a podcast for the past year or so, and in that time I've learned what it takes to get a podcast off the ground from scratch. We're going to go through the entire process, including the gear you need, how to prepare, how to record, how to edit your podcast, and then of course how to publish them to the world. And this process I'm going to show you is basically what I think is the best way to get high quality podcasts in the shortest amount of time. Alright, so let's start off by talking about what is potentially the most obvious thing, which is the gear. Now, the most important piece of gear that you'll need is a microphone. Now, obviously, podcasts are increasingly video based, but because they're generally long form, you want to make sure your audio quality is top notch. So I definitely recommend investing in a proper microphone. The type of microphone I'd recommend is a podcasting microphone, which is what I've got in front of me right now. I'm using a Shure MV7, and these are also known as dynamic microphones. And the main advantage of using a dynamic microphone is that they can be used in a wide variety of settings. They're also relatively affordable for the quality, and they're quite durable, and they have what's called a cardioid polar pattern. This basically means that they pick up the noise directly in front of them. Anything behind or around to the sides they pick up less of, and this can be really good for just reducing any background noise that there might be. Now, I'd also definitely recommend, if you can, getting a microphone that can connect via USB. And the reason this is just to make it more simple for yourself, because one of the biggest things, whether you're starting in general content creation or whether you're starting a podcast, you want to make it as easy for yourself as possible to help you get into the habit. Because if there's friction, if there's things in the way, things that make it more difficult to set up your studio, it's just extra obstacles that are going to demotivate you and potentially contribute to you giving up. We definitely don't want that, so make it easy on yourself. Plus, depending on your budget and your setup, a boom arm like the one I've got, which is a Rode PSA-1, might be a good investment. You can also just get little table stands so you can move your mic around just on a table or a desk. But again, just think about what's going to be easiest for you, what's going to be easiest for your setup, so that there's as little friction as possible when it comes to actually recording your content. Now, you'll also obviously need a computer to record to, and using my method, it really doesn't matter how old or new your computer is, because all the editing we're going to do is online. So as long as your computer can open a web browser and you can connect your USB microphone to it, you're good to go. Now, lastly, if you're doing a video podcast, you'll obviously need a camera, and this can really be as simple as a webcam. The quality of your video isn't as important as the quality of your audio when it comes to podcasting, so prioritize spending money on your mic before you spend money on a camera. But there's actually some really great webcam options out there that give you high quality video, and they're super easy to set up and use. Things like the OBSBot Tiny 2 or the Insta360 Link. Now, you can also use a professional mirrorless camera like I'm using right now. But again, just keep it as simple as you possibly can. I recently used my mirrorless camera for my podcast, and it's definitely a much more involved setup than just plugging in a plug and play webcam. All right, so the second step in the process is to prepare to actually record your podcast. And there's lots of different ways, and it really depends a lot on the format of your particular podcast. But the way me and my co-host Sanji do it is we basically create a Notion page for each individual podcast episode. And then within that page, we just write out a bunch of short bullet points of things that we want to cover in the episode. And the main reason for this is really just to help keep us on track so that we don't waffle on too much, we don't get sidetracked and distracted. Podcasts are known for typically being more free-flowing and conversational than like a pre-recorded YouTube video like this. So you don't need to write out an entire script, you don't need copious notes, but just something to keep you on track, keep you on topic so that your listeners are getting the maximum value. All right, so step number 3 is actually recording your podcast, which is arguably the most fun part. Now, the way we record our podcast is with a platform called Riverside, who is also partnering with today's video. Now, if you don't already know what Riverside is, it's a place where you can record, edit, and publish your podcasts all in the one place. Now, we'd already been using Riverside for about a year before Riverside reached out to me about a month ago and offered me access to their pro account, as well as letting me share an exclusive 20% discount for any of you guys who are interested in signing up with the code NICK20. If you use the code, not only are you getting a 20% discount, but you're also helping support the channel, which I really appreciate. So check out the link in the description if you're interested. But regardless, even if I had no affiliate link, Riverside is still the platform I would recommend because it's the one we've been using for the past year and it's great. So all you need to do if you're recording with Riverside is just to open your studio, and then you send an invite link to your co-host or your guest, basically just like a Zoom call. So it's super easy and intuitive. Make sure your correct microphone and camera is selected and you're good to record. And the way it works, which I think is pretty cool, is it records a really high quality version of your camera and microphone onto your computer locally, and then as you're chatting, it uploads it in the background. And if your internet is a little bit slow like mine is sometimes, then you can pause the upload in the background to prioritize the video call, but it will keep recording the podcast locally on your computer and then upload it at the end of the session. Now, an alternate way of recording is is to have a multi-camera or a single camera set up in one location where both of you are. And this is what me and Sanji did at the start of last year when we first started our podcast. We sat in the same room and recorded just with one camera in front of us. But the main downside to doing it this way is just that it's a lot more work. And again, talking about friction, like I mentioned earlier, the more friction there is, the harder it is to keep going, the harder it is to stay consistent, because you have to edit everything manually and you also have to work out times to meet up with other people, which can be challenging depending on where you live. The next step, which is step 4, is to actually edit the podcast. This is just the way that I find is the easiest and most streamlined. There's a few things to keep in mind. The first is obviously to cut out the major mistakes that you've made. This is the latest episode of the Nick and Sanji podcast. So here at the start, Sanji had a couple of goes at doing the intro. We want to take the first attempt at the intro out, and that's super easy in Riverside because it's all text-based editing. So all you have to do is just select the text that you want to take out, backspace, and there you go. It's been cut right out of the whole podcast. It's that simple. So you can just go through the transcript, find all the parts you want to cut out. If you want to find a specific part of the transcript, you can just hit the button up here, hit search, and just type in something that you're looking for. So for example, we might want to look up when Sanji talked about personal finances. So if I type that in, I can see all the instances when Sanji mentioned that in the actual podcast. I can jump to it. I can cut that out if I wanted to. And this is a great way of quickly and easily editing your podcast based on the content you want to keep in. You also notice down at the bottom here, there's these little markers, and we often will drop markers if we make a mistake, just so when Sanji goes through it again, it can quickly and easily see the spots that he wants to take out. Just needs to click on it, and you can see here there's a bit of a mistake, or we decided to chat about something on the side, and so he can just quickly go to that spot and take out that section. Next, it's a good idea to often cut out any silent parts, and you can quickly and easily do that by going up to the magic tools button up here, and then it gives you this option to remove all silences. So it'll take out 127 seconds of silence. And if you know me, you know I'm a huge fan of Recut, which does this with raw video files on your computer. So I highly recommend doing this right at the start, because then you know you've only got content to actually go through and edit. Everything else has been taken out. And another cool feature Riverside has is to be able to add captions. So since it's already transcribed the entire podcast, we can easily just go ahead and add captions. There's all sorts of different styles to choose from. I kind of like that one, and different fonts to choose from, but I think Inter's looking good. Make it a little bit smaller. That looks pretty good to me. And if I play it, you can see it does a really great job of transcribing and creating captions automatically. I can also change the layout of the podcast. So up here, we've got the layout button. You can choose grid with gaps, full frame AI. So this will just go full frame on whoever's speaking. You can do a shared AI, so it will maximize the person who's speaking and minimize the person who's not speaking. We can do like split AI. So if you've got multiple people in the call, you can have them on the side here, and then the main speaker will be highlighted. And again, just select that with the button and it will automatically set it all up for you using AI. Now, once you've finished editing, all you have to do is hit export, select your video quality. So we'll often do 4K, hit export, and then it will generate the finished podcast episode for you. Download that and you're good to go. Now, another really cool thing within Riverside is if you don't want to actually go in and do that manually, all you have to do is just hit full episode, and this will generate everything using AI. So it'll take out the silences, add captions, and just get it ready for you to export. So that's a really nice feature. And then the other super cool thing about Riverside is that it's got magic clips now. So if I hit generate clips, it will say it's finding the best moments and come up with a number of individual short form clips that you can post to your social media content. And we've definitely found this is a really great way to get exposure to your podcast, because long form podcasts, especially on YouTube, don't tend to get a lot of traction, at least in the early days. Whereas at the moment, short form content is getting pushed a lot more. While we're waiting for this, there's also AI show notes. So if you go generate show notes, it will go through the entire podcast episode and generate show notes for you, which is super handy. You can use this for your YouTube description, and it'll even give you timestamps, as you can see here, which again is super handy for YouTube. Now, our magic clips are ready. And as you can see, they've all got titles, and you can go in and individually edit these to finesse them to your liking. All right, so the fifth and final step is to finally publish your podcast to the world. Now, within Riverside itself, you can publish directly to Spotify, but I'd recommend getting a podcast on as many different platforms as you possibly can. And for this, we use a platform called Buzzsprout. And this basically lets you list your podcast on all sorts of different directories, including the big ones like Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Amazon, and heaps more. You just hit upload a new episode. fill out the info, and when it's published, it'll get pushed to all those different directories automatically. And again, using a publishing platform like this reduces so much friction and saves so much time when compared to uploading individually to different platforms. And then finally, for the video podcast, we just upload that directly to YouTube. So that's just like a normal YouTube upload. So there you have it. Let me know if you've got any questions at all when it comes to starting your own podcast. If you're interested in picking up a podcasting microphone but aren't sure which one to get, then check out my Shure MV7 review, because I definitely recommend these microphones. I think they're a great choice for podcasting.